Hello, everyone, and welcome to 5 and 25. We should be on shortly. So, if you'd like to get settled, we will be starting very, very quickly.
Hello everyone, this is Lauren Flores and we are about to get started with 5 and 25. And so I'm going to just quickly welcome everyone and also just quickly go over the words that we're going to talk about today. They are going to be vaccine, efficacy, vaccine nationalism, rainbow wave, and monolith. So let's go ahead and get started. So let's get started with our first term, which is vaccine. And right now I'm in a database that the library has called Credo Reference that is accessible to everyone, even if you're not in the library on the web. And I'm just going to quickly show y'all the definition for vaccine. And you'll see that there's several different entries. They all have a slightly different focus. I'm going to go to the definition that is in Black's Medical Dictionary, and basically it is talking about vaccine as a name that's applied generally to dead or weakened living infectious material introduced into the body, and the object is to increase its power to resist disease. And so it's also related to some other words like immunity. If you go online, there's a wonderful section in the Merriam-Webster Online Dictionary that talks about the word vaccine and where it comes from. And so I'm going to mention that because I am going to talk about the history of vaccines, which this is going to be really, really brief and not horribly comprehensive. But the big thing that you need to know is that vaccines have been around for quite a long time. The person that we credit with inventing the modern way of doing vaccines was a physician named Edward Jenner. And let me go ahead and pull up a picture of him really quickly while we're looking at this page so you can see what he looks like. That is Edward Jenner right there. And so he was a 18th century country doctor in England. And one of the things that he realized was that the people around him, a lot of them, of course, they were in the country. So several people worked a lot with cows. And he noticed that milkmaids, so that would be women that worked to milk the cows, would sometimes get a type of disease called cowpox. And so it would cause blisters. But apparently, women that got cowpox, if they were exposed later to smallpox, they wouldn't get it. And so let me just show you a picture of smallpox. That's actually a really, really serious disease. You may want to avert your eyes if you're sensitive to this sort of thing, but it's really a horrific disease. It killed many, many people. It has actually been eradicated because of vaccines, so it no longer exists in the wild. But this is an example of a person that has been infected with smallpox. It used to cause many, many deaths. If people did manage to survive this particular disease, they would have scars from the blisters that they received. And so of course, going back to Dr. Jenner, when he realized this, because there was a process that they used to use a little bit before his time called inoculation. And so they would take the pus from the smallpox blisters and they would take it from a sick person and then they would cut the arm of a healthy person and put a little bit of that material. It sounds really, really gross, but the idea was that they were hoping that the healthy person would get a much milder version of smallpox. And of course, that didn't always work because they couldn't really control people because they're just kind of moving active virus from one person to another. And so, by the way, what I'm showing you right now is actually a record of the people that were inoculated in that way in London. Just you can kind of see and visualize this. But so one of the major important things about Dr. Jenner's method, and let me pull him up really quickly so we can look at his picture really quickly, is that because it was from a disease, cowpox, that wasn't as dangerous, it was a lot less risky. So he did the same process where he took material from someone that had cowpox and put it in a cut on a healthy person, and so that person was able then to not get smallpox later on. And so because of that, because of the name of the disease that was related to cows, that's why we have the word vaccinate, because it comes from the Latin word for cow. And so, anyway, just to kind of quickly show you, of course, Dr. Jenner had a little bit of problems getting people to take him seriously because he wasn't a big city doctor. This is an image of something that he published talking about his new method. And if you'd like to see as well, here's some images of his notes. But just so you know, now when you read about vaccines, you can think and thank Dr. Jenner for his life-saving invention. And so we're going to go ahead and talk about our next term in a moment. And so our next term is efficacy, and you will see this and hear this in the news and online because it does refer to the power to produce an effect, and it's one of the vocabulary terms that they use to describe how well a medical intervention like a vaccine works. And so you will see this in several different other contexts. I'm just going to jump back into Credo and show you. You might see this referred to as like an action, like the first definition that we see is teacher efficacy. That's how well a teacher can teach. You may see self-efficacy, which is really relating to how well you can regulate yourself. So it is a word that you will find a lot in your reading. One way that I use to remember the meaning of this particular word is it does sound a little bit similar to effectiveness. It's not quite the same thing, but it is similar, and so I found that that is helpful for me to remember this particular definition. And what I would do is I would recommend exploring either online or Credo to learn more about this word because it is a really interesting, useful word. And so we're going to go ahead and move on to our next vocabulary term. So our next term is vaccine nationalism. I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to my colleague Cindy, who's going to talk about this particular vocabulary word.
Hello, my name is Cynthia De Leon, and I'm a librarian at Central Library, and my term for this version of 5 and 25 is vaccine nationalism. I've seen this term a lot on the internet this week, but I first became familiar with this term, vaccine nationalism, in August because I saw it in articles like Times Magazine and Harvard Business Review. In the summer, there were concerns that countries such as Canada and the UK might engage in vaccine nationalism in the race to end COVID-19, but now this term has been seen more often. First, let's see what nationalism means. According to Merriam-Webster's online dictionary, it means loyalty and devotion to a nation, especially a sense of national consciousness, exalting one nation above all others and placing primary emphasis on promotion of its culture and interests, as opposed to those of other nations or groups. This term vaccine nationalism has become even more important with each passing day because the vaccine is almost here and will possibly be distributed to healthcare workers in some places in mid-December. We will see how this topic plays out on the global stage in the next few months also. There's a worry that some countries may be pressured by their citizens into retaining a vaccine developed within their borders. Now, It currently doesn't look like any one country will hoard the vaccine for its citizens, but in its mildest form, vaccine nationalism can be described, according to the LA Times, as countries who loudly promote their own efforts to fight the coronavirus pandemic, sometimes at the expense of worldwide cooperation and coordination. End quote. Times Magazine presents the three basic scenarios on 8/1/2020 regarding vaccine nationalism. The three scenarios are regarding all aspects of the discovery, manufacture, and distribution of the vaccine. Scenario number one: after the vaccine is discovered, many governments work together to make sure that it gets into the arms of as many people as possible in the world. Scenario number two: the countries who spent the most time, money, and influence get the vaccines first. Then the UN and the World Health Organization step in to distribute the vaccines as fairly as possible to the rest of the world. Scenario number three: each country takes an every country for itself approach, paying a lot for the vaccines and shutting out poorer countries. Richer countries even use access to the vaccines as a bargaining chip in international disputes. In August, Time Magazine saw the world as being currently between scenarios 2 and 3. But President-elect Joe Biden's coronavirus task force member, Ezekiel Emanuel, recently co-authored a paper that advocates against vaccine nationalism. This paper, published in September by Science Magazine, calls for pharmaceutical companies and governments involved in vaccine production to engage in the fair priority model. Experts worry about vaccine nationalism because even if this me-first attitude takes a milder form, such as political posturing and bad-mouthing vaccines produced in certain countries, and not a more alarming form like a country hoarding vaccines for its own citizens, this sort of nationalism might lead to disastrous outcomes. People might lose confidence in a vaccine if a health minister in the UK says that the vaccine developed in his country is better than the one from the US, for example. All the articles I've read have stressed that vaccines don't save lives, but vaccinations do. They also point out that obviously the virus does not recognize international borders and leaves no country unspared. It doesn't do any good to have a vaccine if people won't take it. Global cooperation and mutual trust in the vaccine distribution and PR and marketing front is stressed by international experts. It will be imperative to distribute the vaccine as equitably as possible and destroy any hint of vaccine nationalism if we are to conquer the coronavirus pandemic that is currently driving across the nation and the world. So hopefully we won't see much of vaccine nationalism. Thank you.
So thank you, Cindy. So our next term or phrase rather is going to be rainbow wave. And so I do have a nice picture of the ocean and a rainbow. That's not quite what we are talking about. So let me go ahead and jump to, of course, our web browser so that we can talk about what it really means. And so what it's referring to is the wave of elections of candidates that were elected to office in this last election that are LGBTQ. And so you'll see also that if you do some searching, that there was also what was called a rainbow wave as well in 2018, because there were also several LGBTQ candidates that were elected at that point. And I'd like to jump into Credo Reference because there's a really good article. It is from The Conversation. So it's analysis from academic researchers, and it talks about the rainbow wave, and this is referring to the 2020 election. And it does go in and it describes the candidates and the states where they were elected. So I think this is a really, really good source. It's helpful too because it's got some commentary and analysis. And of course, if you ever want to use this for a type of assignment, you can use the citation generator, you can share this with other people, and you can print it out. So with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and move on to our next term, which is monolith. So, our next term, monolith, has been quite mysterious. So, here lately, there have been several monoliths, which are objects that have been appearing in different places. This is an image from the one in Utah, and it's kind of interesting because it wasn't there for very long. Apparently, it has disappeared. This is what it looks like now, which is just a hole in the ground. But we're going to go ahead and talk about what that means. And I'm switching over to a web search. And so if you do a Google search, you'll see that there's some stories that pop up. I think there's even a monolith here in San Antonio. They're just kind of popping up everywhere. I guess it's a type of fad. But if you go to Credo Reference and you're looking for the definition of monolith, of course, it has several different meanings, but the meaning that we're looking at right now is a single isolated stone or column. They're usually standing and of a great size, so it's a type of monument. So sometimes they're natural, other ones are man-made, and they happen to be distributed all over the world, basically in pretty much all of the continents. And so sometimes people use them as sundials or calendars, and they may even just have a mysterious purpose. So if you look a little further in Credo, there's some examples of different monoliths, and I'm probably dating myself a little bit, but if you've seen 2001: A Space Odyssey, which is an older movie from the 60s, part of the plot has to do with this mysterious monolith that is implied to be left by aliens and causes civilization, or at least human civilization, to develop. So it's really kind of fascinating, and I'm just going to switch back to the web browser just so that you can see. But you might want to keep your eyes peeled in terms of these monoliths because it looks like they are appearing and disappearing. There's no telling if it's a prankster or what it means, but again, that is the definition of monolith. And just to add, in case you're interested, if you look at Merriam-Webster, you will see the history and etymology for the word monolith. It means single stone, so monolithos, that's from Latin, also from Greek. So interesting to know. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to folks. If y'all have any questions, I would like to really quickly, and let me go ahead and switch over to a different website. So let me do that. It will take me just a second. But I did want to mention, if you have any questions about the words that we talked about today, or if you have research questions in general, I just want to direct you to the library's website. That's at mysapl.org. And of course, you can search for information on this page. And if you go to the bottom of the page, there's a place where you can ask a question where it says ask. And so we are available. You can give us a phone call. You can also chat with us with your questions, or you can send an email. And the other thing that I wanted to point out again is if you're interested in looking at Credo Reference, which is one of the databases, or at least the database that we use today on our stream, all you have to do is, again, start at the library's homepage, go to Services, and you're looking for Databases, which is down here at this link. And we do have them listed alphabetically, so you can go to C for Credo. And when you click on it, if you're at home, it's going to prompt you to log in with your library card number. Once you do that with your password, you can get into the database. And of course, if you're having trouble with that, you can get in touch with one of the folks at the library and we can assist you with that. So with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and open up the discussion. I will be in chat. And so if anybody has any questions, then, and thank y'all so much. I wanted to also quickly thank Cindy for her part explaining vaccine nationalism, and I wanted to thank folks as well for coming to our stream.
Hello, everyone. Do y'all have any questions for me today? thank y'all for coming to 5 and 25. I appreciate all the questions that you've been asking so far. And I just wanted to check and see if y'all had any other questions. I don't see any on chat, so I'm going to wait for a second and just see if we have any other questions. If not, what we can do is we can wrap up a little bit early, and hopefully we will see you in the new year. So I'm checking to see. I don't see any other questions so far. I wanted to thank Nick for stopping by and asking such interesting questions. Really appreciate that. And again, if y'all have any questions, I did demonstrate on the library's website where you can ask questions. You can also call us during the week, usually between 9 and 5, and you can call us at 210-207-2500. So it looks like we don't seem to be having any other questions, so I'm going to go ahead and end the stream a little bit early. And again, I wanted to thank everyone. Also wanted to thank Cindy, who did the section on vaccine nationalism. And I'm going to go ahead and log out. I wanted to, again, wish everyone happy holidays. They are coming up. I hope everybody has a safe holiday season and a wonderful and safe new year. So good night, everyone, and see you soon.